The wind howls, carrying the scent of smoke and gunpowder. A muffled gunshot echoes, followed by a sepulchral silence, broken only by the distant cry of a baby. The camera, in a close-up shot, focuses on a blood-stained hand clutching the dry earth before falling limp. The flickering light of a lantern reveals the chaos: overturned furniture, a toppled crib, and the body of a woman sprawled on the wooden floor. The air is heavy, dense with tragedy. No one knew what he would do until they saw the family's bodies. In the Old West, justice was a mirage, and peace an illusion. But in Harmony Creek, the illusion shattered into blood, and the mirage became a nightmare. Sheriff Elias Thorne, a man of few words and many burdens, was about to unearth a truth no one dared to imagine. A truth that would cost more than life, more than soul. It would cost peace itself. The sun rises, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple, but the scene below is a desolate gray. Sheriff Elias Thorne, 50s, face marked by time and pain, tired but firm eyes, a worn hat covering part of his face, a man of medium stature but with an imposing presence, walks slowly through the farm. He stops before the cabin door, which is ajar, revealing the darkness within. The baby's cry, now fainter, can still be heard. Elias takes a deep breath, the smell of death filling his lungs. He knows what awaits him inside. He's seen it before. Many times. Elias enters the cabin. The scene is brutal. The bodies of an entire family, father, mother, and two small children, lie scattered. The sheriff kneels beside the overturned crib, where a baby, wrapped in a blood-stained blanket, cries softly. With surprising gentleness for a man of his appearance, Elias picks up the baby. The crying stops, and the baby stares at him with large, frightened eyes. Elias feels a pang in his chest. He is not a family man, but the innocence of that child deeply affects him. Harmony Creek was a town like many others in the Old West. Founded by dreamers and built with sweat and blood, it promised a simple life, far from the corruption of big cities. But the promise was fragile, and simplicity a facade. Elias Thorne had arrived in Harmony Creek 20 years ago, a stranger with no past, seeking a place to bury his own ghosts. He found a badge in a community that, despite its suspicion, accepted him in his silence. He was the sheriff, the guardian of a peace that was always hanging by a thread. EXT, Harmony Creek Main Street Day. The town is a cluster of wooden buildings, dusty and weathered by time. The saloon, the church, the hardware store, all silent witnesses to hard lives. Elias walks down the main street, the baby nestled in his arms. The few residents who venture out of their homes watch him with curious and apprehensive glances. Whispers accompany his passage. Everyone knows something terrible has happened. Everyone fears what might come next. Int. Saloon Day. Elias enters the saloon. The place is almost empty. Bartender, 40s, stout, with a thick mustache and small, shrewd eyes, wipes the counter with a dirty cloth. He looks up when he sees Elias. Bartender. Trouble, Sheriff? Elias. The Millers. All dead? Only the child remains. The bartender's eyes widen, his hand stopping on the counter. He knows the Millers. A hard-working, discreet family. Who would do such a thing? Bartender. My God. Who would commit such an atrocity? Elias. That's what I'm going to find out. Elias sits at a table in the corner, the baby still in his arms. He observes the saloon, his eyes scanning every shadow, every corner. He knows the truth is hidden somewhere, and he will find it, whatever the cost. Int. Sheriff's Office Day. Elias's office is small and cluttered, stacks of dusty papers and books covering the desk. The baby sleeps peacefully in a makeshift box, covered by a blanket. Elias is bent over a map of the region, marking points with a pencil. He reviews reports of other unsolved crimes, looking for patterns, connections. The miller's death doesn't seem to be an isolated case. There's something darker in Harmony Creek, something he fears is growing. Elias's relationship with his brother Joshua was complex. Joshua was Elias's opposite, outgoing, impulsive, always seeking adventure. Elias, on the other hand, was the pillar, the responsible one. They grew up on a distant farm, and life taught them the harshness of the world. Joshua always got into trouble, and Elias always got him out of it. But one day Joshua left in search of gold, of a life Elias never desired. And he never returned. Elias heard rumors of his death, but never had confirmation. The pain of loss, coupled with uncertainty, transformed him into the quiet, solitary man he was today. EXT, Harmony Creek Cemetery Day. Elias visits Joshua's grave. A simple wooden cross, nameless, only an approximate date of his departure. He kneels, his hand touching the cold earth. He feels his brother's presence, the pain of loss still fresh. He wonders if Joshua found the peace he so desperately sought. He wonders if he himself will ever find it. Int. Hardware Store Day. Elias enters the hardware store. The owner, an elderly, grumpy man, greets him with a nod. Elias asks about the Millers, about any disagreements they might have had. The owner hesitates, his eyes darting away. He mentions a neighboring farmer, Caleb, 50s, corpulent, with a cold, calculating gaze, who had a land dispute with the Millers. Caleb was known for his greed and ruthlessness. Elias notes the name. EXT, Caleb's Farm Day. Elias arrives at Caleb's farm. The place is large and well-maintained, a contrast to the miller's farm. Caleb greets him at the door with a forced smile. Elias questions him about the land dispute. Caleb denies any involvement in the miller's death, claiming the dispute had been resolved. But Elias notices a glint in Caleb's eyes, a nervousness he tries to hide. Elias knows Caleb is lying. He feels it in his bones. Int. Church night. Elias goes to the church. The pastor, 60s, soft-spoken, but with a penetrating gaze, greets him with a welcoming smile. Elias asks about the Millers, about their faith, about any enemies they might have had. The pastor speaks of the Millers' goodness, their devotion. But he also mentions a secret, a sin the Miller family had committed, something they tried to hide. Elias questions him about the secret. The pastor hesitates, his eyes darting away. He says he cannot reveal the secret, that it is a confession. But he gives Elias a clue, a debt, a blood debt. Int. Sheriff's Office Night. Elias sits at his desk, the lantern casting dancing shadows on the walls. The baby sleeps peacefully in the box. He has the pastor's clue, a blood debt. He searches the town's old records, looking for any mention of debts owed by the Millers. He finds a record of an old debt from many years ago with a man named Silas Blackwood. Silas was a notorious gunslinger, feared for his cruelty and lack of mercy. He had disappeared from Harmony Creek years ago, but Elias knew that men like Silas never truly disappear. They just hide, waiting for the right moment to strike. The Miller's death was no accident. It wasn't a robbery gone wrong. It was a reckoning. An old debt, forgotten by many, but never forgiven. Silas Blackwood was the executioner, the reaper. And the Miller's tragedy was just the beginning. The Old West was a cruel place, where the past never truly died. It just waited patiently for the right moment to resurface and exact its price. EXT. Abandoned Farm Night. Elias rides to an abandoned farm on the outskirts of town. The place is dilapidated, the walls crumbling, the roof collapsing. A smell of mold and decay hangs in the air. He finds traces of a recent campfire, empty food cans, and a bottle of cheap whiskey. Silas has been here. Elias feels a shiver down his spine. He knows he's getting closer to the truth, but he also knows that the truth can be dangerous. He's alone, and Silas is a ruthless man. Int. Abandoned Cabin Night. Elias enters the cabin. The place is dark, and he lights his lantern. He finds a diary, hidden beneath a loose floorboard. The diary belongs to Silas Blackwood. Elias begins to read. The diary reveals Silas's story, a man who had been betrayed by the Millers years ago. They had stolen his land, his fortune, and left him for dead in the desert. Silas had sworn revenge, and now, years later, he had returned to collect his debt. The diary also reveals that Silas was not alone. He had an accomplice, someone from within the town, someone who had helped him plan the massacre. Elias feels a chill in his stomach. The truth is darker than he imagined, and the accomplice is closer than he thinks. EXT. Harmony Creek Main Street Dawn. Elias returns to Harmony Creek. The town is silent, asleep. But Elias can't sleep. He knows danger is lurking, and he needs to act fast. He has Silas's diary, proof of the blood debt. But he still doesn't know who the accomplice is. He needs to find out before it's too late, before more blood is shed. He looks up at the starry sky, the full moon illuminating the town. He knows the night will be long, and that the truth, when revealed, will shake Harmony Creek to its foundations. Int. Sheriff's Office Day. Elias spends hours in the office, rereading Silas's diary, looking for clues about the accomplice. He finds a mention of a man who always knew too much, a church mouse who hated the Millers. The description is vague, but Elias has an idea of who it might be. The pastor. He remembers the pastor's hesitation, the secret he couldn't reveal. The blood debt. Everything starts to make sense. Truth is a seed planted in silence, growing in darkness and blossoming in pain. Elias Thorne, a man of few words, was a patient gardener. He observed, listened, and waited. His journey was not one of revenge, but of justice. Not of hatred, but of redemption. He had lost much, but he still had something to protect. The innocence of that baby, the future of Harmony Creek. And for that, he was willing to face any demon, any secret, any betrayal. EXT. Harmony Creek Town Day. Elias begins his silent investigation. He observes the pastor from afar, in his sermons, in his visits to the sick. He notices that the pastor has strange behavior, a nervousness he tries to hide. Elias also notes that the pastor has frequent contact with Caleb, the farmer who had a land dispute with the Millers. The connection begins to form. Int. Barbershop Day. Elias enters the barbershop. The barber, 60s, gossipy, with a sharp razor and keen ears, greets him with a smile. Elias asks for a haircut and subtly starts a conversation about the Millers, the pastor, and Caleb. The barber, unknowingly, reveals valuable information. He says that the pastor and Caleb were longtime friends, that Caleb had helped the pastor in difficult times, and that the pastor always defended Caleb, even when he was wrong. He also mentions that the Millers were very religious, and that the pastor was their confidant. Elias listens carefully, the puzzle pieces falling into place. EXT, Caleb's farm day. Elias returns to Caleb's farm. This time, he doesn't go to question, but to observe. He hides among the trees, watching Caleb and his henchmen. He sees Caleb giving orders, and the henchman preparing for something. Elias realizes that Caleb is acting more aggressively, more confidently. He knows Caleb feels secure, that he thinks no one will discover the truth. But Elias is closer than Caleb imagines. Int. Sheriff's office night. Elias is in his office, Silas's diary open on his desk. He compares the information in the diary with what he heard at the barber shop and what he observed at Caleb's farm. The connection between Silas, Caleb, and the pastor is undeniable. The pastor, the man of God, the miller's confidant, was Silas's accomplice. He had betrayed the miller's trust, revealing their secrets, their weaknesses to Silas. And Caleb, the greedy farmer, had benefited from the miller's death, expanding his land. Elias feels a wave of anger, but he controls it. He knows that anger is poison, and that he needs to remain calm to deliver justice. EXT, church night. Elias goes to the church. The pastor is alone, praying. Elias enters silently, and the pastor turns, surprised. Elias confronts him with the evidence, with Silas's diary, with the information he collected. The pastor denies everything, but Elias doesn't give up. He presses him, and the pastor finally breaks down. He confesses everything. He had gotten into debt with Silas, and Silas had blackmailed him. He had revealed the miller's secrets to Silas, and Silas had promised to forgive his debt. The pastor cries, remorseful, but Elias knows that repentance is not enough. Justice must be served. EXT, Caleb's farm night. Elias and the pastor go to Caleb's farm. Caleb is in his house, counting his money. Elias enters, and Caleb stands up, surprised. Elias confronts him with the pastor's confession, with the evidence. Caleb tries to deny it, but Elias doesn't let him. He accuses him of being Silas's accomplice, of having benefited from the miller's death. Caleb, furious, tries to attack Elias, but Elias is faster. He disarms him and arrests him. Justice is being served. Int. Prison cell day. Caleb and the pastor are in the cell, separated by bars. The pastor cries, remorseful. Caleb is furious, but powerless. Elias watches them in silence. He knows that justice is a slow and painful process, but it is necessary. He knows that truth, when revealed, can be brutal, but it is liberating. He feels a weight lift from his shoulders. He kept his promise. He brought justice for the millers. And he protected the innocence of that baby. EXT, Harmony Creek Day. Elias walks down Harmony Creek's main street, the baby in his arms. The town is silent, but this time, it's a silence of peace. The residents watch him with respect, with gratitude. They know Elias is a man of honor, a man of justice. Elias looks at the baby, who smiles at him. He knows that the future of Harmony Creek is in that child's hands, and that he will do everything to protect it. He feels new hope, new strength. He has overcome his own demons, and now he is ready for a new beginning. The journey was long and painful, but it was worth it. Peace, finally, had come to Harmony Creek, and Elias Thorne, the quiet sheriff, had found his own redemption in silence. Int. Sheriff's office night. Elias is exhausted, but adrenaline keeps him awake. Silas's diary, the confessions of the pastor and Caleb, everything fits. But there's a missing piece. Something the pastor mentioned in his despair. He knew too much. The man who blackmailed me, he had proof. Elias realizes that Silas wasn't acting alone from the beginning. There was a mastermind, someone who orchestrated everything, who used Silas and the pastor as pawns. He revisits the diary, looking for any mention of a third party involved. Nothing explicit. But there's a pattern. Silas always referred to a boss, someone who gave him orders, who provided him with privileged information about the victims. In the shadow play of the Old West, the shooter isn't always the true enemy. Sometimes, the hand that pulls the trigger is merely an instrument. The real threat hides in the depths, manipulating the threads of destiny. Elias felt it. A cold, calculating presence that hovered over Harmony Creek long before the Millers' tragedy. A presence that fed on fear and greed, and that was now about to be unmasked. EXT, Harmony Creek Town Dawn. Elias, with the baby asleep in a basket beside him, watches the town from his office window. The moonlight illuminates the central square, where the gallows stand, a grim reminder of the justice awaiting Caleb and the pastor. Suddenly, his eyes stop at the mayor's house. The mayor, a respected man seemingly above suspicion, had always been a staunch defender of order and morality. But Elias remembers small details. The mayor's haste to close the Millers' case, his insistence on not investigating thoroughly, his strange closeness to Caleb in recent months. A chilling intuition runs down his spine. The boss, the man who knew too much, the mayor. Int. Mayor's house night. Elias breaks into the mayor's house. The place is luxurious, but there's an air of disarray. Papers scattered, drawers open. Elias finds a secret compartment behind a bookshelf. Inside, a wooden box. He opens it. Inside, he finds a series of letters. Letters from Silas Blackwood to the mayor. The letters detail the plan, how the Millers would be eliminated, how the land would be acquired, how the pastor would be blackmailed. The motive? The mayor was bankrupt, and the Millers' land, rich in ore, was his only salvation. He had orchestrated everything, using Silas as his arm and the pastor as his informant. The revelation is a blow. The man who swore to protect the town was its greatest predator. EXT, Harmony Creek Central Square dawn. The sun rises, but the atmosphere is heavy. The town gathers in the square for Caleb and the pastor's hanging. Elias, with the baby in his arms, steps onto the platform. He says nothing about the mayor. Not yet. He waits for the right moment. The mayor is present, with a satisfied smile on his face, believing his plan was perfect. But Elias watches him, and the mayor feels the weight of the sheriff's gaze. He knows something is wrong. The truth is about to explode. EXT, Harmony Creek Central Square day. The executioner prepares to carry out the sentence. The crowd is silent. Elias, with the baby in his arms, steps forward. He raises his hand, asking for silence. The crowd watches him, curious. Elias, with his hoarse, firm voice, begins to read the mayor's letters. Each word echoes in the square, revealing the betrayal, the greed, the cruelty of the man they trusted. The mayor's smile disappears, replaced by a look of terror. The crowd murmurs, then shouts. The truth is a blow, a punch to the town's gut. The mayor tries to flee, but is restrained by the crowd, who now see him as the monster he truly is. Justice, finally, is served. Not by the gallows, but by truth. Justice in the Old West didn't always come with a noose around the neck. Sometimes it came with a word, with revelation. Elias Thorne, the quiet sheriff, had unmasked Harmony Creek's true enemy. The mayor, the man who hid behind a facade of respectability, was responsible for the Millers' tragedy. The town, shaken by the truth, began to heal. Peace, once an illusion, was now a real possibility. And Elias, with the baby in his arms, felt the weight of responsibility, but also the lightness of conscience. He had kept his promise. He had brought justice. And he had protected the innocence of that child, the future of Harmony Creek. EXT, Harmony Creek Cemetery sunset. Elias visits the miller's grave. He places a wild flower on each headstone. The baby, now a little older, plays in Elias's lap. Elias looks at the sunset, the orange and purple hues painting the sky. He feels the miller's presence, the peace they finally found. He knows that life in Harmony Creek will never be the same. But he also knows that the town now is a safer place, a place where truth prevails. He remembers Joshua, his own journey. He smiles. He found his own peace. EXT, Harmony Creek Main Street Day. Elias walks down Harmony Creek's main street, the baby in his arms. The residents greet him with respect, with gratitude. He is no longer just the sheriff. He is the guardian of truth, the protector of the town. He sees hope in people's eyes, the promise of a better future. He knows the journey continues, that new challenges will come. But he is ready. He has truth on his side. And he has the innocence of that child, a constant reminder that life, even in the Old West, can be beautiful and full of hope. The story of Harmony Creek is a reminder that truth, however painful, always finds a way. And that justice, however long it may seem, always prevails. Silence can be stronger than any weapon, and one man's courage can change the fate of an entire town. Would you have done the same? Would you have unearthed the truth, even knowing the price of peace? This was another story from the Cowboy Soul Stories channel. If you were moved by Sheriff Elias Thorne's journey, if you felt the dust of the Old West and the weight of truth, like this video and share it with your friends. Leave your comment below. What secret would you like to see revealed in Harmony Creek? Your opinion is very important to us. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories that are coming. The next adventure is already waiting for you.